He's a threat to our very way of life and our values. I mean, he's a vegan who thinks God is non-binary and that there's actually 6 biological sexes. It's hard to imagine someone more radical than that.
Ken Paxton embodies the broken political system that we're running against. He is the most corrupt politician in America. 3 years ago tomorrow, he was impeached by his own party for using his public office, his position of public trust, to enrich himself and his donors at our expense. And that is exactly the problem in our politics. It's puppet politicians who serve themselves and their billionaire mega donors instead of serving us. It's why we can't afford anything. It's why we can't get ahead no matter how hard we work. The system is rigged by corrupt politicians like Ken Paxton.
And that is your matchup for the Texas Senate seat after Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's dominant win over 4-term incumbent Senator John Cornyn
and every
in a
Democrat
primary runoff election.
Every Democrat in America, Willie, says thank you.
Well,
because what they have just done, by this guy right here, by overwhelmingly doing it, which is, again, all people say, oh, there needs to be a strong Republican. Really? This is what the Republican primary gives you? No, I don't think there needs to be a strong Republican Party, especially if this is what the Republican Party produces. But it's hard to estimate. Did Texas Republicans just cost the Republican Party $20 million?
definitely cost some money.
$30 million? $40, $50 million? $100 million that they could have spent in Maine, that they could have spent in Iowa, that they could have spent in Ohio, that they could have spent in Alaska. They have cost Republicans maybe $100 million that could go to other competitive races. Meanwhile, really, Donald Trump has enraged Republican senators who are now saying, okay, first of all, you get this Yahoo that you endorse, and now we're going to have to work with rightfully very angry John Cornyn, Tom Tillis. Just
John Thune.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is a huge win for Democrats.
Yeah, I'm hearing the $100 million number that you just cited that they're not going to have to pour into Texas. I think you and I both share that longtime skepticism of Texas turning blue.
Right.
They haven't had a statewide elected representative in Texas, Democrats, since '94.
They also haven't had a guy like this run statewide.
I was going to say, but this is a different kind of Republican candidate. Donald Trump, people remember, swooped in last week at the 11th hour and endorsed Ken Paxton. John Cornyn wanted that endorsement. Paxton won last night by almost 30 points. 28 points is the margin. It was not close. And now you saw a little glint in the eye of James Tallarico, and Democrats is saying for the first time in a long time, we at least think we have a real shot here.
When it comes to sheer awfulness for a political candidate, Paxton's sort of a unicorn. He has all of these different traits.
Wow.
No, all of these different traits.
Can I give you one quote, Joe?
Please.
Well, first of all, you could ask his wife about his character. That's one place. She made that public last year.
But hot and heavy
this
right
is a quote from Senator Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina. Quote, "To call Paxton ethically challenged is to call Jeffrey Dahmer suffering from an eating disorder."
There you go.
That's from Republican Tom Tillis.
But true.
Okay, Jeffrey Goldberg is here.
Exactly, yeah.
We'll go right. I don't.
Are you now like the Pope attacking AI? What is this?
Just stop it. Are you like the Pope?
Exactly. Yes, you are.
In some ways.
In some ways.
Infallible, Jeffrey. In other ways, not.
Sir.
In other ways, completely
many have
not.
said, sir, you remind me of the Pope in many ways.
Yeah.
John Lemire, $100 million. Democrats just got to, first of all, let's just talk about how bad of a DNC chair Ken Martin is. And let's just talk about how crazy the Democratic Party is, that in times that should be, like they should be striking up the old FDR happy days are here again, but they've got a 20% approval rating, and they're getting completely blown away in fundraising. Completely blown away. Why Ken Martin is there instead of, well, first of all, Ben Winkler at the beginning, or anybody else. Force Rahm Emanuel to go back in because Rahm wins, and I know a lot of Democrats hate that. I know they hate doing the smart thing. But my God, he is so horrible at his job. I'm sure he's a wonderful person, a wonderful wonderful community. I don't know if he's married, but I'm sure he's a great husband. Great if he has kids. A great father.
Coaches T-ball.
A wonderful T-ball coach. But running great at carpools. He's one of those guards that goes out in school. But as a DNC chair, he is just horrible. They are getting crushed by the Republicans. I say all that
Maybe
to
it's
say.
just an impossible job, Joe. Maybe
Right.
No. Ask Rahm Emanuel, who said we're going to do a 50-state strategy back in 2006. Did it. They won. But that said, once again, there's a divine providence, to kind of quote Bismarck, that protects fools, drunkards, and the Democratic Party. And in this case, Ken Martin, the DNC, just got a $100 million windfall thanks to Texas voters.
Yeah, well, Rahm Emanuel too busy running for president to run the DNC right now. We'll see if Ken Martin hangs on here.
How does he hang on?
It would be unlikely. The handling of the autopsy last week was universal.
Oh my God, what's wrong with him?
I mean, you shouldn't have come. It should have either come out initially or shouldn't have come out at all, and then they sort of.
Why doesn't he just say?
measures.
Why doesn't he just say early on, "Hey, I'd love to release this, but it really sucks."
Right. I mean, it makes no mention of either Joe Biden's age or Gaza. I mean, it's a deeply flawed document.
Didn't even have a conclusion.
Didn't have a conclusion. It's annotated repeatedly. The DNC had to write, "We disagree with this. We disagree with this. We disagree with this," and it also just reopened old wounds for a party that, to your point, Joe, is trying to turn the page. Just say, "Hey, we have the wind at our back right now," and that includes in Texas. Now, for Trump's endorsement,
Well, hold on. Just going on with DNC and Ken Martin, they Republicans have over $100 million cash on hand. RNC. Democrats are $4 million in debt because nobody trusts Ken Martin or the DNC to give him any money.
Yeah, it's a combination of no trust for Martin and the DNC and still residual bitterness as to how 2024 was handled. And the Biden-Harris handoff, there's a lot of anger and suspicion among some Dem donors. We would think that certainly come presidential, that will change. But right now, there has been a reluctance to give that money. And they've got a shot here now to put the Senate in play. It is still an uphill climb in Texas. And I think that the Trump endorsement came mostly not because he put his thumb on the scale for a win. He saw the win coming, and he wanted to jump on board Paxton and claim the victory. But this is now, to your point earlier, Tillis, Cornyn, Cassidy, 3 Republican senators out because of what Trump wanted, who are not going to be super inclined to help him going forward.
On top of Murkowski, on top of Susan Collins, who's going to desperately try to win a state that was, plus 5, 6 for Harris. I mean, it's going to be tough. John Meacham's with us. John, I'm going to give you sort of a potpourri of things to do. You can talk about the Knicks. You can talk about the fact that we have the Pope, a lot of people call the Potomac Pope, with us. Or you can talk about Ken Paxton last night. I know there are some historical parallels there. You and I talked about this yesterday, perhaps a bit of the John Birch Society. What's your take on the Republicans in Texas desperately trying to seize defeat from the jaws of victory?
Well, Texas is always fascinating, not least because if you think about the last 60 or 70 years, when John Tower won LBJ's seat, in 1961, it was a signal of what was about to happen over the next couple of decades in Southern Republican politics. First Republican since Reconstruction with John Tower, which encouraged people like young George H.W. Bush to challenge Ralph Yarborough in 1964, begin to make the state a little more competitive. And you wonder, even in this deeply polarized world, whether a nomination like Paxton begins to put the country, Texas and parts of the country back in the beginning of a post-Trump place. To me,
he does look healthy, though. But go ahead, John.
Yeah, but the central question is, of the last 11 years, will we know in 2028 whether this has been the age of Trump, which it indisputably is historically, or is it the age of Trumpism? And that test begins this fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at a nominee here in Texas during his time in office. Ken Paxton has repeatedly been accused of bribery, fraud, and self-dealing.
That's by Republicans, by the way.
But has never been convicted of a crime. Months after he took office in 2015, he was indicted on 2 counts of securities fraud. In 2020, a group of aides reported him to the FBI, accusing him of bribery and abuse of office to help a friend and political donor. In 2023, he was sued by the State Bar of Texas for his efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. In 2024, after 9 years and several legal delays in the securities fraud case, Paxton finally settled, agreeing to a $271,000 fine and community service. In 2025, an investigation by the Associated Press found that Paxton claimed 3 homes as his primary residence, allowing him to save tens of thousands of dollars.
Wasn't Donald Trump trying to get people arrested for doing that?
Loan payments, yep. But he has never faced legal action for this.